Hi everyone, my name is Ahmed Hussain. I am 21 years old and I am from Afghanistan. Um, Currently in Afghanistan, there's a 40-year civil war going on, a 40 plus year civil war going on between different ethnic groups and radical Muslims. Um, for multiple generation, people from my ethnic group were being persecuted because of what they look like and the branch of Islam they choose to follow. So freedom of religion and freedom in general is very important for me, which brings me to introduce uh, my social issue, which is the mass incarceration of Uyghur Muslims in China. So in China, there's this ethnic group. They're being systematically surveilled and imprisoned in an attempt to essentially wipe the culture off the map. Um, they're mostly a Muslim ethnic minority in a region of China called Xinjiang, and the Chinese government has been them absolutely terribly. A UN a UN report says that the region resembles a massive internment camp, where more than 1 million Muslim minorities have been rounded up, detained, and forcibly indoctrinated by the Chinese regime. Witness account, satellite imagery, and a Communist Party documents reveal what appears to be the largest imprisonment of people on the basis of religion since the Holocaust. And if this is the first time that you're hearing about it, it's probably because China has done its level best to keep the story from getting out, but it may be getting harder to ignore. So let's start with a bit of context. About 11 million sorry, about 11 million Uyghurs live in Xinjiang in the far northwest corner of China. It's resource rich and it's strategically important, but the Uyghurs have always had an uncomfortable relationship with the authorities in Beijing. They have their own because they have their own language and are culturally and ethnically distinct from the rest of China's population, which is more than 90% Han Chinese. On top of which, there's the fact that Uyghurs are Muslim in a country that is aggressively secular. So much so that a few years ago, a Chinese reality show went to Dubai and Stead TV censored all depiction of a woman in headscarves. So there's that baseline difference there. On top of which, some Han Chinese have held bigoted views of the Uyghurs. All of this was exacerbated by the Chinese government encouraging Han people to migrate to Xinjiang, with them often being favored over Uyghurs for the top jobs. And this tension and resentment, amid an overall atmosphere of extreme discrimination, finally boiled over in 2009, with riots in the capital that killed over 200 people, mostly Han Chinese. But rather than address the complex underlying factors behind the riots and other incidents, the Chinese government simply painted them as religious terrorism, beginning a decade-long crackdown that escalated steadily, especially after China's President Xi Jinping came to power and instituted what was called the Strike Hard campaign against violent terrorism in 2014. All of a sudden, Uyghurs started being treated like they were all potential terrorists. In fact, Xinjiang is now one of the most heavily policed areas in the world, with the authorities surveilling things that most people would find utterly meaningless. If you go through Uyghurs' neighborhood or suburbs, there are cameras over literally every house entrance so that the government can see who enters and who leaves. It, ev- it even goes further. The government has a list of 75 behavioral indication of religious extremism, with some as vague as people who store large amounts of food, those who smoke and drink but quit doing it. Sorry, those who smoke and drink but quit doing so suddenly. But look, China doesn't just collect this information; it also feeds it to a predictive policing system that monitors potential threats. In 1 week, it flagged the names of 24,000 people as suspicious, 15,000 of whom were then sent to re-education camps. And when pressed on whether any of this is strictly necessary, Chinese officials argued that they are simply being proactive. But people in Jiangcheng have been arrested and thrown in camps despite having committed no crimes, which is chilling. A million Uyghurs were at one point being held extrajudicially, many for acts as innocuous as growing a beard, fasting, or applying for a passport. And this is a very sore subject for the Chinese government, which initially denied the existence of the camps at all before shifting to arguing that they are merely vocational training facilities. Now, leaked classified documents have shown that the staff at these facilities were told to prevent students from freely contacting the outside world, and that they should stop students from escaping. And I'm not even gonna get into the reports of forced abortion and sterilization of Uyghur women, which are absolutely terrific. And China will argue that this is all about economic opportunity and attempting to assimilate a historically ostracized minority. But assimilation, when forced, is cultural erasure. Because in addition to using mass detention to keep families apart, there are also rules that seem to be trying to break the chain by which family hand down a culture and fate across generations. From laws that prevents kids from going to mosques, to a ban on baby names that are considered too Islamic, to the creation of a state-run boarding school for Uyghurs. Now, other moves by China have been more on the nose, like destroying monasteries or destroying mosques. Now, thankfully, as criticism of China's scams has intensified in recent years, the government seems to be closing some of them. Unfortunately, though, they seem to have shifted to staging sham trials and transferring Uyghurs to prisons that aren't even pretending to be training centers anymore. China also created a system of mass labor transfers that sent Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities into factories and service jobs, sometimes hundreds or thousands of miles from home. The idea, as one local government report puts it, is that sending Uyghurs far from home would allow for distancing them from religious extreme views and educating them. And a lot of people have been distanced. Another report that investigated forced labor found over 8 companies that employed, well, that had Uyghurs workers. Some of them big international, some of them were big international brands like Nike and Volkswagen. When the Washington Post visited the factory of one of Nike's suppliers, they found Uyghur workers. Nike has claimed that this factory no longer employs Uyghur workers, and another company on the list is which told they found no indication of forced labor in their supply chains. Um, so much so that last year their CEO was challenged about Chinese treatment of Uyghurs, and his response was that he was not aware of it. Uh, However, the U.S. has taken some small steps, like proposing sanctions against top Chinese official. U.S. Congress even passed the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act earlier last year. Now, going forward, the entire global community needs to do more. The UN should have independent investigators looking into what China has done in Xinjiang. Governments around the world should be speaking out about the treatment of Uyghurs without bending to China's economic influence. And big multinational companies like Volkswagen should not only be working to clean up their supply chains, but also actively using their financial leverage to pressure the Chinese government to end these abuses. But none of that is going to happen unless people pay attention. And look, I know that awareness is often a solution that doesn't really solve a problem, but there can be a real benefit to awareness, because in this instance, awareness is actually a necessary precondition for action. And I know there's a lot of things to worry about right now, from a raging pandemic, from people protesting the 8 p.m. curfews, to extremely slow waves of vaccination. But we have to make sure that the treatments of Uyghurs is also on that list, because when you're dealing with a concerted campaign centered on on cultural erasure, one of the most important things we can do is continue to pay attention. So at the very least, we don't have in 50 years we don't have a classroom full of students asking their teachers why the world didn't do anything about it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.